All right, what's going on, folks? Cedric Maxwell podcast here. John Zannis with, of course, Cedric Maxwell, Celtics legend here, and the radio voice of the Boston Celtics, who saw it all firsthand there in New York as the Celtics season came crashing to an end. One of the most embarrassing losses in franchise playoff history, and honestly, Max might have been one of the biggest choke jobs of a series in Celtics history when you think about how they lost this. And we can point to a million different things, injuries, Tatum going down and this and that, but this series was lost in the first two games, was it not?
Yes. First two games really clarified everything. You had two 20-point leads. First game, you had a 20-point lead. You were playing well. Everything went good in the first half. You're shooting it. You're feeling comfortable. Fan base going crazy. And you said, okay, this is what's supposed to happen. And then in the second half, the Celtics just kind of fell apart. They stopped knocking down threes. They stopped going to the hole. They started just taking threes. Their shot selection was poor. And they lose the game. And you said those things are going to happen. Then you did the same thing in the second game. You go up by 20 again in the second game. Shot selection becomes poor. You stop doing those things that got you there. You stop rebounding the basketball. You didn't play a smart game at the end. And the Knicks come back and beat you again. That to me was a telltale sign of a team that just really didn't think that they believed, but they didn't actually believe in what they were doing at the end. Because this was a team, a Knicks team, that you were superior to this team. And you just look at the results, and then by the time you got to game three, you mustered up some courage and won that game. And then game four was a critical game. Then you had to come in and play well. Tatum played his ass off, knocking down shots, kept the Celtics in the game. Celtics went up again by 10 to 15 points. And then Tatum goes down, and then you knew that the writing was on the wall. And the Knicks way to win game four. You win game five at home, which was creation. You used some courage at the end, but you knew going back to New York, it was going to be extremely difficult unless and I said it again, Jaylen Brown had to be the same Jaylen Brown that you saw in game five. He had to be the best player on the floor. And he had too many turnovers in that game, and he wasn't. And the Knicks, just systematically start beating the Celtics, and they just beat them to a pulp.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned Jason Tatum in game four, and that's how people will remember things, which is Tatum trying to carry the team to victory, 42 points, going nuclear, hitting all of these contested shots, doing those things that we've seen him do, but he hadn't done consistently enough, certainly not in recent playoff memory in terms of the shooting. When you talk about going down two games, Jason Tatum, a huge part in that because he was not the guy they needed him to be there. He shot the ball really poorly. I think, 12 for 42 or something in that range in terms of field goals. Settled for a lot of really challenging shots, couldn't knock down his threes. So that didn't help them. And the whole offense just kind of came to pieces with the inability to get buckets there for long stretches of time, allowing the Knicks back into those games with those 20-point leads. So, we're doing our shows, Max, we're doing these post-game shows, and people want blood, right? And the first thing that they do, you gotta fire Joe. How can he allow that? And then other people are looking at the players and this and that. Like, look, you played. You're close to the team. So I know you don't want to sit in here and call for people's jobs or put it all on somebody. But if you're slicing up blame pie for how the series went down, especially looking at those first two games, just those two games where the series really was lost. You don't blow those leads. You win the series, even if Tatum goes down probably, but everything changes. Butterfly effect. It wouldn't be the same thing. So I don't think that necessarily happens, but where are you placing the Lions' share of the blame here for them choking away those first two games?
Just overall, everybody. The inconsistency with everybody on the floor. Things they did really well in the first half of those games, they just stopped. Pritchard, who was the sixth man of the year, couldn't hit any shots. Bench play was poor. Sam Hauser didn't play. Porzingis, whatever Porzingis had, he was essentially a shell of himself. And then Joe Mazzulla, everybody said fire Joe, but what does Joe do in game number 5? Comes back home, you're down 3-1, and he starts Porzingis in that game. And then Porzingis doesn't play well. He does what most good coaches do. He abandoned one of the star players and then put Luke in, and Luke changed the tide of the game for the Celtics. They able to come back. Luke Cornett did a great job of being a facilitator. Brown, here's the big thing about game number 5. Brown had 12 assists in that game, 3 turnovers, only 3. In some of these other games, Jaylen Brown had 6 turnovers in the game. So it was, I don't like, it's not one thing, it's a whole lot of things that allowed the Celtics to lose. They couldn't rebound. They got killed on the glass. Mitchell Robinson destroyed them on the glass essentially by himself. They just collapsed. They collapsed. I wouldn't say choked. I just think they collapsed.
Yeah, and again, fair. In the losses, Jaylen Brown turnover 7, 4, 6, and 2. So it's certainly not great. 7 in that last game there. In addition to fouling out in the third, not his best effort. But yeah, they choked. They collapsed. I'll ask you this though, again, just because I personally, Max, I'm never and I know you're a player. You're a former player. I'm a not blame, but I think it's the player's job to play, and the coach can only do so much there. But I'll ask you your opinion. When you played, if you guys are kind of losing a lead, 20-something point lead, you see it slipping away. How much can a coach fix that? How much is it on them to either adjust to what the other team is doing or stop you from doing whatever it is you're doing that's allowing the other team to come back? How much of that can you put on Joe when you see it going wrong, going sideways? What can be done there?
As Joe would say, look, what? You want me to do what? We shot threes. This is what we do. This is how we won a championship. They continued to shoot threes. What I looked for was them attacking the rim. The thing that was missing, the biggest thing that was missing was the fact Porzingis has been awesome in the paint. He'd get the ball in the paint, he would score. We had smaller guys on him. He was turning around, he was missing shots at the rim. Whatever he had, whatever illness he had, lingered throughout the playoffs. So you missed a huge part of where you scored the basketball to stop the bleeding with Porzingis in the paint.
Yeah, and that's a killer, right? Injuries. And again, when we sliced up our blame pie on the Garden Report, I put 60% on injuries, not because it's excuse making. I don't. If Jaylen Brown can jump, or Kristaps Porzingis' illness isn't where it is right now, if those guys are healthy, they win. Even tripping all over themselves, you're going to win that because you're just going to hunt another team, even if you're not playing great or going through some of these bad stretches, because they didn't have anybody to bail them out of it. When the offense is going to hell, sometimes you throw it into Porzingis in the post and it's a cheat code, or he knocks down a 30-foot three. Yes. And I think that was such a huge part of last year, which is when you got bogged down in your ISO ball, my ball, your ball, Tatum Brown stuff, and it wasn't going, or they slowed down, you could always just give it to KP and he'd be like, he was 7'3" all day and he would just turn around and score. And it was like, that was easy.
That was that. I hadn't thought about that, but the cheat code, that was it. Part of that was missing because that's what you did. When the games got tight, you throw the ball into KP or you hit one of those ridiculous 3-point shots.
Yeah.
He never got into rhythm. He never had confidence. You never saw him after he got sick or whatever illness he had. He never really came back to the full KP that the team has loved, that the fans have loved. So Joe had to change what they did on the fly. I'll tell you a good story. 1981. I know people rolling your eyes on it, but 1981, Larry Bird struggled against the Houston Rockets in his first championship. Now, what did he do that was great? He averaged 15 rebounds a game, 15 points. But from a percentage standpoint, he only shot like 41% from the field. Now, that's ridiculous for Larry. Now, I'll ask you a question, John. got the great Kevin McHale, one of the best post-up players that's ever played in the NBA. How many points do you think he averaged during that 1981 championship run in the finals?
You tell me.
I want you to take a guess. You Garden Report. Come on.
I'm Garden Report. What are the Garden
Report?
I don't think he scored that much.
John, you would score that much. He averaged 4 points a game.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying and telling the story is because somebody else has to pick up when the guy isn't playing as well. That is what I think Jaylen Brown was doing for a minute in those first 2 games when he was scoring early in the game, and then everything went to pot. When Tatum the game Tatum had 13 points, but he had 4 or 5 rebounds. That is one of the things or Tatum had 15 rebounds and 13 points. He picked up his game in other ways. No other Celtic picked their game up. As great as we've seen Drew Holiday struggled during this series. Derek White picked his team up from time to time. But you look at game number 6, Derek White struggled. The only one that scored the basketball early on was Brown. Nobody else was even in the picture. So the blame game is always easy when you think about players and what they do. But understand, it boiled down to those first 2 games. You losing those first 2 games, putting more pressure on you. You put all the pressure on the world on the New York Knicks if you win those first 2 games. And I don't think we're even talking about who the Knicks were. I don't even know if you're talking right now if Jason Tatum got hurt, because I think it would have been a clear blowout in a lot of those games. You might not even have gotten to game number 5. Yeah. So I just believe that, at the end of the day, the Celtics were their own worst enemy. I had a chance to talk. Joe Mazzulla let me talk to the players before one of those games. And what I told them, I said, and what Joe talked to me about was the Boston Celtics, Tatum and Brown. Not only are they playing the rest of the NBA, but they're playing the history of the Boston Celtics. Our fan base, Celtic fan base, they go back to Russell, 8 championships in a row. They go back to JoJo White or John Havlicek. They won 2 championships. Then they go to the Cedric Maxwell, Larry Bird era, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish. They won 2 championships. Paul Pierce, that's another era that you're fighting against. So you have the extreme unfortune or fortune of being with the Boston Celtics, of playing the NBA and also playing your team, and to see how great you're going to be. And I said the only way you separate yourself, I thought they had a chance this year, is to win another championship, something that none of those teams had done since Bill Russell's team.
So I'll ask you this. When you look back, and again, the second half of the show, we're going to kind of spend more time on the now and the future, because all of a sudden you went from a 2 to 3 year championship window where you might be able to win a couple to who knows what. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, but without getting into the details of that yet, just looking at this and making the assumption that the window shut, they won the 1 title. That's that. Disappointing?
I'm very disappointed when you think about this team, because I could see them winning a couple of championships. Everybody had them favored in the beginning of the year to repeat. And even as the playoffs began, the Celtics were in perfect position to win another championship because they were supposedly healthy at that time. You didn't know that Porzingis had what he had. You didn't know Brown had the knee, which they're going to come back and they're going to scope his knee because it had a torn meniscus in it. There are all those little things that we did not know about this team. But as Sean Grandy would say, my broadcast partner, the Celtics bubble wrapped all their players. They didn't play them all the time. They rested them. They were able to do all this stuff. And you assume they were coming into the playoffs healthy, but they really weren't.
Yeah, they weren't. And the health is a killer, and we've seen it around the league with stars going out here. So I'll ask you quickly before we transition into the rest of the kind of Celtics present and future here, which is definitely murky. and maybe not that sunny, which I'm sure people don't necessarily want to hear. But boomers like like you and Gelso, and guys who played every game and played hard and gritted it out and this and that, tend to generally not like this idea of the load management here. However, we're seeing an insane amount of stars going out with like considered to be high usage injuries. Jason Tatum being probably one of the few NBA Ironmen remaining, in the sense that he's not playing all 82, but he never wants to sit. And when he does, it's usually for a good reason. And sure, when you have nothing to play for late in the year, maybe they will manage or sit him in a couple of games here. For the most part, he doesn't want to sit, and he's playing heavy minutes every single game. He goes out and what was most routine looking play, just simply trying to get a ball that was sitting a few feet in front of him. Devastating Achilles injury. Who knows what he's going to look like when he comes back? Definite level of concern surrounding that. But you got a lot of people right now, Max, saying like, you guys are going to make us play 82, expect us to dance, dancing clowns in front of the fans who paid this good money there for their amusement. Then we're not going to be available you make us do that for awards, which are tied to incentives for our contracts. And then I'm going to friggin' risk my career getting into the playoffs, tearing something in there like it's an out of shape injury. These guys are as well conditioned as you could possibly be, but they're going down. You're seeing an insane amount of injuries with guys going down, and you're heading into the playoffs.
Let me tell you why.
Is there incentive?
Let me tell you why. No, let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because I know you want to know this answer. Why are all these players going down?
I don't know.
My belief. This is just me. I think they play too much.
Yeah.
I think they not in the regular season, but all the stuff they do in the off season. They never rest their bodies. Jason Tatum, he went from winning the championship, playing in June or almost July, right into training camp for the Olympics. Here's my thing. I've said this 1,000 times. Either you rest your body or your body's going to rest you. It's unfortunate, but that happens. So during my years, okay, all right, Grandpa, tell us how it is. During our years, what they used to tell me, the veteran players, get away from the game. Go home. Rest for 3 months. Don't do anything. Don't do anything basketball-wise. How many guys you see right now don't do that? They train essentially almost all year. They don't get around and gain like 8 or 9 pounds or 10 pounds during the summertime. Then come back and work it off in camp or whatever it is. They're in shape all the time. But because of that, they never, ever let their bodies rest. And the way the body will rest you, sometimes it will get injured. And saying, you weren't going to rest me, so I'm going to rest us. And I truly believe that's what happens in the NBA now.
Yeah, and sure, off-season rest is fine, but again, during the season, the rigors of the game now, I'm not compared to later, but it's everybody's an athlete. There's really no coasting. There's no days off. The requirement.
John, give me a break, okay? Don't be telling me about how the rigors of the game, how it's so different now. Okay, what we stay is in, and I'm going with the Celtics here. They stay in luxury hotels. They're on planes, private planes.
Yeah,
they have chefs. I eat with them. They have chefs in the morning that cook them breakfast.
Yeah,
all the stuff that didn't happen during the 80s, we didn't. We flew commercial. We stayed in cheap hotels. We did not have all the training staff. You had a coach, you had a trainer, and you had an assistant coach. My first year in the league, John, first couple years in the league, we had to wash our own uniforms, our own road uniforms. So I don't want to hear all this stuff about, oh my God, the rigors of the game.
We're not talking about rigors like your life is hard.
Let's throw some of that money at you, John. Let's throw that 300 million around that might be coming.
I'm talking about.
I'm going to go there for the general fan. Okay.
I'm talking about right now. I mean, the bigger, stronger, faster you are, the more taxing you are putting things on. There's limits to what the human body can do. We might have gone a little too far with basketball. Is probably the most stressful on your body sport because of the hard surface, the cutting, the jumping, the landing, the constant back and forth. It's a demand. It's a physically demanding game. I'm not saying it wasn't physically demanding back then, but the faster, stronger you get, the more muscle you have to support these cuts and these jumps. It's hard to stay healthy all the way through an NBA season right now. I believe, because they're so, you're right, they have training. They're in such tremendous physical shape that there's a Red Sox pitcher. I don't know how much you like the Red Sox, Max, named Rod Beck back in the day. Rest in peace. He's not alive anymore. He was kind of one of these old school bearded, chubby relief pitchers who never got hurt. And they asked him, "Hey, Rod, well, how does it you never get injured?" He goes, "You've never heard of a guy going on the disabled list with pulled fat."
What did he say? Because I'm using that fat that I've stored up during the.
He's like, "You don't pull fat, you pull muscles." I have no
you
muscles.
Don't pull fat. Yes, and I like that. I'm not saying that the guys can't be conditioned. I love the fact that they are, but I think there's a fine line.
But is there an argument to play less? That's all I'm asking.
No, it's not playing less. There's a fine line of playing less. I think less during the off season of giving your body.
But you want them to play as many regular season games as possible. And you don't think that like, I'll put it this way. As a fan, I get it. But let's say it's your $500 million you're putting in there, plus 280 of luxury tax into this team. Do you want to see Jason Tatum go out and make fans happy 82 games?
You're not saying the fan now. What you're saying is the
preservation
ownership
of your team. Yeah. Ownership and winning. And winning.
You're talking about ownership now.
I'm talking about
the general fan. The general fan wants you to play every single game.
I get it.
We know that's impossible.
And my kids want me to play with them 14 hours a day, but I don't have that kind of juice, Max.
What happens, John, is that the average fan that comes to a game, whereas he wants to see Jason Tatum play, this is the bummer of it. Michael Jordan, doing most of his career, almost played 82 almost every year. For the most part, early in LeBron's year, played almost 80-something games a year. Fans sometimes, and this is the only time I really feel bad, is when we're on the road and Tatum and Brown won't play. And they say it's Portland, Oregon. And you have scraped up money to bring your son to see Jason Tatum play. And he's not playing tonight. Why? Is he hurt? Is he hurt, or are you resting him?
I understand, Max, but we're not talking about.
I look at and going, that's the only thing I look at. I understand preserving your body, and I understand that the product now is a lot more valuable because of the amount of money and resources that you're putting in that product. So you want to preserve that as much as you can. I do understand that.
You do want to
preserve fine line. That's the fine line that the commissioner, the Players Association, and the players and the teams have to get together and find out.
Yeah, and you want to preserve it.
You're not going to play less games. You're not going to play. Well, I tell you, John, here's a novel concept. Cut it down to 60 games.
That's what they won't do.
Right. And reason why? What reason is that, John?
Yeah, it's money. But
okay, it's like in the NFL right now, as much as they talk about, we got to preserve these players and that. John, where are they at now? Are they talking about 19 games now?
They are, but they're taking away preseason games. You're right. It's going to be more punishing because the players will play in the preseason games.
Preseason is what now?
That's
correct. But each team
I know, Max.
Each team is starting to do more and more to really get their product and make sure they maintain it and then have it on so you can make more money.
Fine. 2 points. First, I get it. But let's not pretend that the Celtics, I know you mentioned the fans scraping together money, but it's not like grabbing Tiny Tim from the orphanage and bringing him to a game here. You're talking about some dad from Wellesley driving his Tesla with his "I didn't know Elon was bad" bumper sticker and his boys Xander and Liam to the game. Those kids can live with a little disappointment. They didn't get to see Jason Tatum. I'm okay. They're going to be okay.
Let's say this. You're not driving a Tesla, right, John?
No.
And you're bringing your kids to the game.
No, I asked you for
Let's
tickets.
get the average person that might, because it is. We know that it's an expensive product wherever we go when you go to a game. But there are some fans. There's a lot of fans that come to games that go, "Wow, I was dying because I got tickets and Jason Tatum's coming to town." That's not the illusion of saying we're not giving the thing to the people with the Tesla or Trump or whatever it is. I'm just talking about there's some fans and kids out there.
I get it.
Very disappointed when they're at a game, and I will see one with a Tatum jersey, or Brown jersey, or Porzingis jersey on, and I'll say to him on the road, I'm like, "Well, you know he's not playing tonight."
Well, I'll tell you this, Max. Xander and Liam, from this game, they don't get to go to any more games this year because Jason Tatum got hurt, and they're sitting home crying about it. And these kids are fickle. They're fair weather fans. They're not necessarily staying with the Celtics forever. They go through a period of 5-6 years of demise because the franchise fell apart because your best players got hurt from overuse. And I'm not saying it's cause and effect necessarily, but ultimately having a competitive team for the long run, going deep into the playoffs and winning championships keeps more fans engaged than the one game I went to and Jason Tatum sat. So there's something to be said for, hey, man, I want to preserve these guys because I want to continue good rather than run them out there. So every regular season, person who bought a ticket, it's different when you wholesale sit an entire team.
Why, John? Why are fans disappointed right now when the Celtics only, as you said,
season's over?
You said early in the broadcast, you said the Celtics choked. Why are they disappointed when you know that, okay, well, you're going to be there for a while, you're invested in it. This is life lessons. You're not always going to win.
And you're not always going to see Jason Tatum play.
You're not always going to, but you got a chance to see him for how long have you had him now?
Great.
How many times have you been to the playoffs? How many times has he been to the finals?
A lot.
In that,
twice, but anyway.
That, John, how about this? Even in that, people look at Jason Tatum as a disappointment because he only won one championship.
Yeah.
It was last year. It was just last year. They said in the NBA, he was the best player to not win a championship that was in the NBA. So I think I think it's really fickle how things go when we talk about the athletes and preserving them, all this other stuff. It's really, really fickle how you can get over that line, but then you have to jump back the other way when this guy goes down. I think, and now essentially, where is he going to go?
I think people want it both ways. It's the same. It's the same argument you get into with the All-Star game. I want these. If you asked a fan, a room full of fans, do you want the All-Star game to be competitive? They would say yes. And then you ask that same group of fans, well, hey, what if your star player got hurt in the All-Star game? Would you have rather they sat? You'd be like, oh my God, yes. But people didn't want them to play in the Olympics.
John, you have just stated the obvious.
I didn't want them to play in the Olympics.
What you said. People want it both ways. Yeah. But you can't have it both ways.
They want to preserve them so they're there when it matters, but they also want to see them every night.
You're not going to have them both ways. I think for me, I hate the All-Star game. I hate the All-Star game. To me, it's a waste of time. Unless you change the format. And the format to me, which would really be a good one, if you put some WNBA women in playing with the guys, I think they'd be a lot more competitive about getting embarrassed.
Yep.
I see when I see them out playing on the floor and they score 230 points, 240 points. That's a layup drill. What you just had was a layup drill. So you don't have anything competitive about it. We can go back in history of games, and there are very few people who are going to be competitive. Pete Rose is one of them. Pete Rose, you think about what he did and there was a catcher
Fosse
who was at an All-Star game. Fosse was his name.
Yeah.
And he was lined up at the All-Star game, and Pete Rose was chugging around. Pete Rose could have avoided him. This is the All-Star game. And he was sitting there at home plate, and he was blocking the play. Pete Rose doesn't change his tenor. Pete Rose body doesn't say it's an All-Star game. I'm flying in. I'm taking these guys out. That's the difference in now when you think about players.
Yeah.
Right now.
Ray Fosse, by the way, broke his shoulder, never healed properly, experiencing chronic pain for the rest of his life. So,
Well, what
congrats.
game was that? What game was that you're talking about?
It was an
All-Star
all-star game. Yeah.
All-Star game. Okay.
Yeah, it was an all-star game.
I know a little bit of history about sports.
Yeah.
Of things that I look at and I see. Your comment is the most brilliant, but the most asinine one that is around. When you say fans want it both ways.
They want it both ways.
That's brilliant. But again, on the other side, that's asinine. It can't happen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we got to move on a little bit here, but yeah, good conversation on the load management front there. I do want to remind people at home, again, this is the Cedric Maxwell podcast. The Cedric Maxwell podcast is part of the CLNS Media Network, as you well know. And for those listening to the show, we kindly ask, please leave a rating and review. If you're listening, you love Max, tell them about it. Put it on there. It really does help us when you rate and review the show. And if you're watching it here on our CLNS Media YouTube channel. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe, turn on your notifications, support the network. Helps us bring you this type of free content, helps you bring more Cedric Maxwell stuff, both here or on our history channel, which you can as well, or our Celtics All Access channel. You'll find Max's face littered all over of those CLNS properties.
And if you hate me, that's even better. Please tell me that you hate me. I love that because I used to do talk radio and guys would call in, I hate you. I was like, dude, you just took part of your day to think about me living rent-free in your head to call up and tell me how you hate me when I'm getting paid to be on this show, but you're calling me up and you're calling up for free. So even if you hate me, you don't like me, respect the fact that, you know what, we can disagree. And that's why I think that's why I love doing these shows. Even when I'm doing John, when he gives you that asinine but true statement, you know, that's what we do. We try to keep it real here on the Cedric Maxwell podcast.
Well, I mean, you do keep it real, and I'm gonna say right now, I'm pretty sure they like you. But that's and when they do pop, what the hell is John doing? But that's okay. That's fine. that's fine too. I can live with it. Moving on, and again, hold on one second, Max, as I pull something out here. We did talk about Jason Tatum. I'll ask you this. Not all injuries are equal, and Achilles ones tend to be kind of a crapshoot. You have seen a lot of athletes, and again, unique circumstances with Tatum. Ruptures his Achilles, but he's 27. Peak physical condition, also has the surgery very quickly, which we've learned sometimes that does make a difference, and it helps for optimal recovery here.
John, let me ask you that. What would you be waiting for? I know people said,
I've never understood
really quick. What the hell are you waiting for? You know the Achilles is done. You go back in, you do it immediately. What are you waiting for? That's what I've heard from people telling me that over and over again. Well, why did they do it so quick? They knew it was an Achilles rupture. They went and fixed it. And your healing process starts right now, the day that you repair it. Now you start the rehab.
Our terrific young reporters, Bobby Manning, Noah Dalzell, spoke to a few kind of injury experts here, and they said a lot of times it has to do with just pieces aligning. Literally, geographically, where is the surgeon? Where are you? Talking to your agent. A little bit of red tape that gets in the way, which sometimes, instead of doing it in 24 hours, can cause it to go 2 and 3 and 4 days, but that ends up being detrimental, which is a strange thing, because I would think, as this $300 million asset of yours, if I'm ownership, I'll build a machine that will teleport a doctor from wherever he is to my guy, but build a hospital and have that thing done, build it around wherever he happens to be sleeping that night and get the surgery done in the morning. So but all that being said, apparently it went as well as it could go. So there's additional hope that he's going to be okay.
When have you ever heard of a failed surgery? When have you?
There's no such thing.
Any football players, basketball, anybody who said the surgery it failed?
Well,
Normally, he said it was successful. That was you.
I said this on our show for people who don't understand. Successful means they didn't die on the table, or there wasn't a major complication that successful just means they lived, but it has nothing to do with recovery. So talking about recovery and these injuries, and you've seen them over the course of time, and medical science and the ability to repair athletes has improved leaps and bounds. ACL back when you played was you might not walk again, your life is over, and now some guys are coming back in 9 months off of that, and they look close to what they looked like before, and within 2 years they're back. But hey, Achilles is a little different, especially for basketball players, and it mainly has to do with the jumping and the explosion necessary to be able to spring, and it doesn't always come all the way back. So I think everyone's going to be holding their breath for a full year until you see Tatum, and then you might have to hold it a little while longer to see if he ramps back up and gets there. But it is pretty scary. What's your level of concern with your franchise player here?
My level of concern is nil. And the reason I say that, not the fact he had the injury, but I know he's going to come back, because I know he's going to bust his ass to get back. I talked to a couple of people, basketball players in particular. One of them that I did not like when I played is Bernard King.
Yeah, on the episode last week. Check it out.
We'll get this on. Bernard King said to me after Tatum went down, he said, make sure you tell Jason Tatum he will come back and he will be an all-star again. And this is Bernard King, who had a devastating he tore his knee, he broke a bone, he did all these different things, and he busted his hump and came back and was brilliant, to the point where it's said in our last podcast, I saw something on him, but he had said that, he had an offer sheet from the Boston Celtics. He was going to play with the Celtics with Larry Bird, but ended up Washington gave him more money. But I believe Jason Tatum, young player, I think something like this, to me, John, gives you almost another, and I'm saying, I don't forget about the injury was devastating. But what I'm saying here is that sometimes people get a chance to look at the game that they can't play anymore, and it becomes that much more precious to them.
Yep.
There's a whole nother level when you tell a kid that he cannot do it anymore. You can't, I'm throwing your PlayStation away, I don't have it anymore. And then all of a sudden give it back to him 6 months later, he becomes more in tune to what he wants to do. I think Jason Tatum's going to come back that way, injury-wise.
Yeah.
I think that and he wasn't, and his game, the Achilles is about, about some quickness and about exploding and getting up in the air. I think he'll get that all back. I think he'll get all that back. And as you get older, there's some things he just won't get back.
Yeah.
But he's a crafty player, and we've never seen him be the powerful player that jumped through people or jumped over people. He beat you with his quickness. A lot of times, to me, Jason Tatum beat you with his mind. Because he wasn't the quickest, overpower you, but he would get you with that dribble and hesitate and wait for you to go one way and he'd go the other way. So his game isn't like that. He reminds me, it's going to be like, could be a lot like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant had an Achilles injury, took him out of basketball, came back, became an all-star again. And Kevin Durant was much older than Tatum when he had this injury. So I look for a full recovery and some at the end of the day.
And that's, again, I think the major hope. You mentioned Bernard King, again, at a time where that was career ending. It was ACL, meniscus, and I think he broke his leg. Like, everything happened. It was a catastrophic injury, and he did come back. Dominique Wilkins, another one who played tail end of his career with the Celtics. He suffered it. He came back, was effective. He wasn't the same guy. He lost about a foot off his vertical leap. He had to kind of change his game around, became more of a jump shooter, and had to kind of change his profile. But you're right. Tatum's a little bit craftier. He's not one of these of course, quickness matters, but athleticism and physicality. So again, the hope is that he just gets back that quickness and doesn't suffer a recurrence. But that's kind of the general hope with him. The problem now, Max, as we move forward, is you're likely to play without Jason Tatum for if not the entire year, the majority of it. And I think there's a lot of people out there wondering, is there any benefit to rushing him back, particularly if the team isn't really contending or in a position to? Do you want to just give him the full year and get him all the way back? And we'll see you again. And that we'll see what happens. Again, there's different surgeries. One thing that was rumored or reported is he had something called a speed bridge surgery, which, a lot of us are learning about, now, which is a speedier recovery, which could have him back as early. I think his father even said 8 months, 9 months. That would put him in a return. I don't know that people necessarily want to see that if it's a lost season, but let's just say they're without him for a year. Okay. You're heading into next year. That was going to be a weird one anyway, right? You're coming back next year with Tatum, presumably Brown, and then who knows who else because of this second apron luxury tax situation. So I know everyone at home desperately wants, daddy to live till he's 120 and like nothing to ever change and everything is the way I want it to be. And I'm going to, curl up in my blanket and pretend the bad things aren't happening. But the bad things sadly are probably going to happen to this team and maybe even hastened by the Tatum injury, because now you've gone from let's see what happens as we reconfigure the roster to we might have to just look till 2 years down the road before we're relevant again. So I'll ask you this. You were looking at potentially Holiday, potentially KP, potentially Sam, potentially Al, potentially Luke, as all or some combination of them being cap casualties. What do you think Brad Tatum is on? We haven't even mentioned Jaylen Brown could be out a period of time with a meniscus injury. You've got so much uncertainty into next year. I'm going to have you put your GM hat on here. What do you do? And you have to factor in the different types of return you get for everybody, with the idea that trading Holiday and or Porzingis might just be salary relief, but you're not going to get players that are going to help you. Trading Brown might hurt you too in the short term, might help you in the long term if a team is willing to pay big. Paying for the free agents is going to cost you a lot of money unless you can get under that second apron. What are you trying to do if you were in charge here? What do you hope Brad does to try to not tear it down, or do you tear it down and say, I'm going to look a couple years ahead. I'm not worried about next year or the year after that at all?
Let me use a prop for you. Okay. This is what I'm going to use here. What we're doing right now, we're going to change the face of this franchise. Okay. The way it's going right now, we're going to change the face. This is what happens, because I think you get a chance right now to reset this team and the way it's going to play, because Tatum won't be back for a while. You're still going to be a team that has some great pieces. So what are you thinking in your mind? The Boston Celtics aren't the team that's built for, we're going to get in the playoffs, so we're going to be a playoff team, and we're going to get to the first round and we'll be happy. No, they're built about winning the championship. So your reset button might be exactly what Brad needs to, because if you had won the championship this year, you'd say, well, you got to bring the band back again. Bring them back one more time. And you knew that wasn't going to happen because of the salary cap. So I think this year will be more about Brad Stevens and what he wants to do with this team and the pieces that he has. Will the Tillmans be back who have contracts? Will Pritchard has a friendly contract that people would look at? I think all options have to be on the table that you look at. Look what happened with Dallas. Dallas traded, and you have to have some luck with you. But Dallas went out and traded Luka. Nobody ever thought that would happen. But you have to put everything, all the cards on the table, and see exactly what you want to happen to this organization.
So no one's off limits to you?
I don't think they are. I'd say Tatum and Brown. Tatum and Brown
are off limits.
And if you say one more player, I'd say Derek White.
Okay. So you want to preserve that core.
Those three players right there would be off limits. I think off limits. But everybody else, I think, to me, would have to be thinking like, yeah, things could possibly change because of the salary cap structure.
we want to take a quick pause and let everybody at home know that this episode is powered by Prizepicks. No better time to get in on the action than right now with picks. Basketball playoffs are underway, and you want to get in here. All you have to do is sign up, use the code CLNS, play 5, get 50 instantly in your account once you do. Again, it's America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform. Super fun, super easy. Pick more, pick less on 2 players. At least 2 players went up to 1,000 times your cash with Prizepicks. Yep, check it out. Use Max's little. Does this guy give advice?
Little Maxi.
Yeah,
he agrees.
He agrees. Little Maxi agrees. Sign up for Prizepicks, code CLNS. Play 5, get 50 instantly in your account. Prizepicks, run your game. Okay. Would you consider in any world, so here's the thing where I think we're stuck a little bit with the Celtics is the bill comes due, right? If you go all in, that means you went all in. It means you spent now, and I'll worry about the price tag later. We're at the later, so they have to worry about the price tag. If you're getting rid of, and again, I say this, I said this on our show, and we got in a good debate about it over on the Garden Report, is what you got Holiday and Porzingis from teams that didn't want to pay veteran guys money and weren't going anywhere. And I have news for you now. The Celtics might be that team, at least in the short term right now. And so when people come to trade with you for those guys, you're Portland, but those guys are 2 years older and one of them's coming off a mystery illness. So the value is going to be even less. So when you're trading those guys, you're taking back a lot less in return, which leaves you with a roster that has a core intact, even though your 2-star players are injured, Derek White, a cheap Peyton Pritchard, not a lot else because you went all in, and all in isn't just paying money. It's trading draft picks for stuff. It's not having young players in the pipeline, which they don't right now, unless you expect Baylor Scheierman or Jordan Walsh or J.D. Davison to make ungodly leaps. And maybe there's some promise there, but I don't think anybody thinks one of those guys is a star. You're hoping that they can be rotational players who can fit and play some meaningful minutes. That's ideal. So they have to.
But let me ask you this, though. You say that, but you say that, but did you think Pritchard was going to be a star?
No, but you got to hit somewhere, right? They might.
Those things happen. So you don't
maybe. Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know.
I think it's great. I'm bullish on Scheierman. I like him. I'd like to see what he turns into.
Scheierman's an old school player. He reminds me a lot of the way he plays. He reminds me of, and dare I say this in front of some
Pistol Pete.
He reminds me a lot of John Havlicek. In the way he's very smart, he's crafty, he shoots the ball, he runs the floor. I like what he brings to the table. But I think you look at some of the other things that are happening that you have to say, okay, this is one of those things. Are you going to be, as you said before, you went in and you got these players because these other teams were bad, they were trying to get draft picks, Are you that team? Yeah. Are you that team? You have to think that way. Like you said, you're looking at you can't, it's hard to get. It's like, how lucky did Dallas get to go out and get, to get rid of one guy and then to get Cooper to come in after him, where they had like 1.6% chance of getting the first player in the draft. The good thing about the Celtics, they do have some of their own draft picks. Now, what will they be like, or picks from other teams? That's where I think that the key to where the Boston Celtics are going to go, it all lies right now in Brooklyn. And here's the other thing you didn't talk about, which I think is really solid. You have a solid coach. You have a solid coach in Joe Mazzulla. Now, the biggest thing about Joe Mazzulla, can he go back through a possible rebuild? If you're thinking about this team taking a step back, and you automatically taking a step back if you don't have Jason Tatum. You automatically taking a step back. So we don't have to argue about that. You have to be pissed at me, but you're taking a step back without him. So if that's the case, where does Joe Mazzulla go? What does he have to do? Does he in for that haul? So you have some great pieces. You have a great organization, you have a great fan base, and a fan base that is spoiled. This fan base is spoiled because Jason Tatum, as long as he's been here, you've been to the finals twice. You won one. You've been to the conference so many times. You came back from a unbelievable deficit in Miami a couple of years ago, down 0-3 to get it to 3-3, and possibly could have beat Miami in the seventh game if Tatum doesn't hurt his ankle on the first play of the game.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of movable parts with this team, but the biggest one, which is consistent, is you do have some great players, you do have a great coach, but being patient. And I think this is where Brad Stevens comes in, and he has to earn his money. I mean, Brad's already to me, but Brad has to take yet another step up of being creative, because nobody saw Porzingis coming in here doing what Porzingis did except Brad Stevens. To get rid of Marcus Smart, the heart and soul of you defensively. Everybody, I know I wasn't for it. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Garden Report, I mean, a guy like Bobby Manning, he didn't see it. You didn't see it.
I did. I liked it.
You saw, well, because a lot of, and it's really funny. A lot of people just didn't like Marcus Smart in general. And
I liked Marcus Smart. I thought Marcus Smart was vastly overvalued. I think every team is better for having a Marcus Smart on it. But when you're counting on Marcus capable of being, there were unrealistic expectations placed on him. I think Marcus Smart is your ideal sixth man energy guy, come off the bench, D up, but running your entire offense with his limited offensive arsenal, I thought was asking for more out of him than you could. He's not a good shooter. He's not an offensive creator. I think they needed that to unlock some of what Tatum and Brown can do, or space the floor with more shooters around them. That was my Marcus Smart take, but I love Marcus.
And that happened.
Yeah.
That happened. But nobody saw Porzingis, even you saw Porzingis fitting in.
We didn't know. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
You saw him fitting in the glove.
No, we didn't. That was the question. How's it going to work with these guys?
Nobody saw that. So that's why I'm saying that creativity of Brad Stevens is going to be the big test with this franchise going forward for the next 5 or 10 years.
Two things you hit on. I want to circle on about clickbait, porn for the over 60 crowd. Anytime you compare anybody to John Havlicek, show me something dudes born in Boston who watched in the 70s love more than John Havlicek. You can't find it. Okay. Havlicek is God to an entire generation of longtime Celtics fans. So for that crowd out there, I want to go back to Scheierman. What is it about his game that you see that could draw a comparison as lofty as that? Because I don't want to put you quite there, but another famous color commentator in Boston, Tommy Heinsohn, was always quick with the comparisons, the most legendary being, or the most legendarily inappropriate or was comparing Greg Steamsma to Bill Russell, which goes down in infamy as ridiculous player comps in the history of most ridiculous comparisons of anything to anything. So when people will hear something like that, Hondo's a Hall of Famer. Hondo's one of the best players of all time. He's an all top 75. His heart and soul of the Celtics through that run carried them over, bridged the gap from the Russell to the Bird, and Maxwell and McHale, big three era, you guys. So what do you see about his game that you love so much?
One, that he's in today's NBA, he's a shooter. He can score the basketball. He's smart. He's heady defensively. He's a young player, but he's old at the same time. So he doesn't come in like these guys who are 21 and 22. I think he's 24, 25 now. So he's going to be ahead of the curve that way. But I just love the way he plays. Fundamentally, he's sound with his shooting. I thought he was great defensively. His passing was superb. And guys, I'm not saying he is John Havlicek. I said there were some qualities about him that I see that remind me. Now, I'm going to tell you, well, you want to believe your line eyes or my line eyes? I played with John. I played with John Havlicek. And so I can tell you of the qualities that John had. John was the best shooter. People didn't even want John on the team, for these shooting games that we used to have. John was like one of the last. He was in the second tier. You thought John would be the first tier? No, because John wasn't a good shooter. But when it came to getting it done and playing the right way, John was just relentless, and he was vicious, and he defended, and he ran all day. Scheierman runs all day. He is vicious. He plays on the defensive end. So there's my synopsis real quick.
We love it. And the last thing you mentioned was among the assets the Celtics are retaining here, and I wanted to go back to this and we'll close here, is Joe Mazzulla. You mentioned Brad. He's earned his money. Joe Mazzulla won a championship. I'm going to play both sides of it. I'm a Joe supporter, and I wasn't always. At first, I found his style a little odd, thought maybe he was stubborn, thought maybe he was in over his head in terms of being able to manage this roster, being thrown into the fire the way that he was, with do what you can. And I think you saw, and he took some of his lumps in his first season, but I think Joe has evolved tremendously as a coach in terms of his ability to make adjustments throughout the season. I think he did teach the team to play a lot of different ways throughout the year. I think it's a little bit of an unfair critique for people to just say all he does is tell them to jack threes. I don't think that that's the case, personally. I think he's operating at a much higher level than most people can comprehend, and his knowledge of basketball might be unrivaled. He's a legitimate savant. But
he is. Let me stop you right there, because he is. And the reason I say this is because when I got ready to speak the other day to the team, they brought me in as they were going through their session, film session, looking at tape. And when he was talking, and I think I'm a pretty smart basketball player, they were talking about chess, and I was still playing checkers.
Yeah,
I didn't even. I was trying to follow your tap two, post drive, drop to the left, or this guy here. It was amazing to see how complicated and complex the things that they were doing and they were talking about. So it wasn't just, we got to get up as many threes. No formula for getting up threes. And I asked him about this. One thing that drove people crazy. I asked him about this. I said, it was one time I want to say it was game 1 of game 3 that the Celtics ended up losing. And Pritchard took a shot, and I didn't think it was a good one. It was like a logo 3, and momentum was going with the team, and he airballed it. I was like, oh, man, that just really killed him. And Joe said something to me which just blew my mind. He said, I never complain about guys taking threes. I'm like, why is that? He says, because would you rather for them to take a three or to turn the ball over?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa,
yeah.
Whoa. So when he was talking about things to me, he even opened my eyes for an old basketball player to understand, where you were going and what you needed to have done.
Yeah. He also, very much views like drives to the rim that don't result in baskets as live ball turnovers, because you get the team in transition, you take yourself out of the play, and that so often results in a bucket or a transition or a way. It's a big thing where people didn't understand. Why is he telling them to shoot these threes? Because it's generally a safer shot too, because you can get back a little bit, not only playing the percentages in the math game. It is important to be able to win the math, but also he views it as an overall safer shot, not just for what happens on that possession, but what happens after it. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And again, I know he spent time with a lot of the reporters talking over some of the things with them, and they come out of these meetings and they're like, holy wow. So of course he gets basketball, but there's more to it than that. He had a ready-made team. He had to figure out how to get these guys to play, which is no small task. That's usually what kills coaches, right? The stars just ate me alive, and that didn't happen here, and I think he earned all of their respect. But now he's going to have to be creative, find different ways, and now this whole Mazzulla ball thing will be put to the test. With whatever roster they end up with next year, which is going to be totally different because you're gonna lose parts and you don't have Jason Tatum, who's your engine. Can Joe figure out a way to make it work? And is he at all in jeopardy here if things really start to falter and don't look good? Because fault or no fault, the first guy to get the blame or the first person to get moved out when things aren't going well, and things are probably not going to go well, certainly relative to the last couple of years, next season, it ends up being the coach. So do you think he's safe, or do you think he's kind of coaching for his life here this year?
Okay, let me bring him back in. Here he comes again. Here we go. My alter ego comes back in. Now, I'm using this prop all day. This is who
Are you telling us what that is?
I look behind him. Remember, it was Little Penny and all these. This is Maxie right now. This is my alter ego. Okay, I'll let him go away. I think Joe Mazzulla is safe.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, I think Brad loves him. I think the organization loves him. I think he's a damn good coach. And he and I were talking one day. He said, I don't think I'm a good coach. I said, Joe, I agree with you. He kind of looked at me. I said, no, I think you're a great coach. He said, great coach? How you come up with that? I said, because I think you are great at managing men, managing personalities. And I think that's the biggest thing in egos. That's the biggest thing that players have to work, that coaches have to work on these days. You don't have those guys down in Foxborough anymore being generals. The players and the coaches somehow have to coincide and live together a lot more. Joe has made it very comfortable for these guys to go forward. Now, here's the thing, which is I love about Joe. He isn't kissing people's asses. He wants to be disliked. He doesn't like the great friendly coaches we've had in Boston over the years. Terry Francona. Nobody disliked Terry Francona. Let's go even further. Let's step up. Doc Rivers. Nobody didn't dislike Doc. Doc knew how to smooth. Joe doesn't do that. And I love that, because Joe is essentially, if you go to a bar, I'm not a real drinker, but if you go to a bar and you say, damn it, no chaser, that's who Joe is. Joe is straight liquor. And that's all you're getting out of him. You want orange juice, you want something on the right, you want this, you want that. The only thing Joe might give you is some ice in the drink. That's about it. And I happen to like that. And I think it's good for basketball. I think it's good for this organization. And the biggest thing about it, his players believe in him. His players.
Yeah.
And you get your players, your main guys, believing in you. That's the big difference between winning and losing and going forward with your franchise these days.
Yeah, well, I found something Joe Mazzulla and I have in common in that case, because the only thing I have with my liquor is the glass, and that's about it too. So I'll tip one, tip my glass to Joe Mazzulla, who I do think did a good job, and I think gets a little unfair criticism for their failures, because I do think that that's the lowest hanging fruit that fans seize upon and isn't necessarily what's to blame. The thing you said, I couldn't agree with more, Max. I think ultimately when coaches get fired, it's because they lost the room, the ability to communicate, being hard. They became too hard. You see those coaches who are hard asses, they always have an expiration date, because at a certain point, it works when things are going well, but if things aren't, you're just like, man, I'm trying to get off my back. And I know that you can only carry that so far. So you got to be tough. You got to be supportive. You got to treat them like men. I think Joe did that remarkably through these seasons, because again, it's really easy to coach a team with this many stars. We saw it get the best of Brad. It's what ate Brad alive. He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't reach these guys, and he knew it. And he was a great coach and a great basketball mind. So it's a tough job. We'll see how it goes. Mazzulla's job will be made even more difficult next year. We're going to wrap this edition of the Cedric Maxwell podcast. Once again, asking you to rate and review the show if you're listening on audio, or subscribe to the CLNS Media Network if you're watching this video. And little Max's doll over there is telling you.
There he is. Little Maxie comes in.
We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
All right, guys.